Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated, but there is a better, simpler way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to live events. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There's nothing quite like seeing your favorite team or musician in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone, and it's by far the easiest way I've found to shop for tickets. I could be anywhere, and with just a few taps, I can instantly find seats. I actually used SeatGeek to buy tickets to go see the Marlins and experience the whole thing. It was fantastic. SeatGeek is designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever. SeatGeek saves you time and money by searching multiple ticket sites to compare prices and find amazing deals. Plus, every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence. Best of all, my listeners get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code Bomani today. That's promo code BOMANI for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase.
Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
The saga of Ezekiel Elliott and his accuser and the NFL roll on. I feel like it is the saga of all three, and it should be discussed as the saga of all three. As one thing that the three of them have in common is what keeps us coming back to this story, even though there's nothing really to come back to right now. And what do the three of them have in common? I have no reason to take the word of either party involved in this. In fact, I don't even know if either is the right word since it's 3 of them, right? But we got 3 sets of people here in whom I have little to no trust. Little to no trust. I got Zeke. I don't know that dude. I ain't got no reason to trust what he says. I got the NFL. I do know that dude, and that's why I don't have reason to trust what he says. And then on the other side, we have the accuser. And so the accuser becomes its own interesting sort of thing because we got a couple things that wind up at play in matters of domestic violence. I've talked about this before. It's a bit complicating, but the problem is we're not really prepared to have complicated discussions about these things. We just now got y'all to the point of being like domestic violence bad. And in fact, we don't even have y'all all to that point because the savage things that people have been saying to me on the internet today about this woman is like, whoa, about that woman, other woman, man. I had people coming up and telling me, one dude told me today, and with all the seriousness in the world, that more people, or more women to be specific, lie about being abused than there are women who are actually abused. Right. He told me that. And so I've had some questions about Ezekiel Elliott's accuser. I think that she has credibility issues. The NFL even touched briefly on it in their report that, yeah, there were some things that she said that were not necessarily true in the course of that investigation, right? So I've got all these sides of people, none of whom possess any level of credibility. And what I don't have is the actual report, right? I've got a memo that gives some summary, basically, of why the NFL did what it did, but I don't have their full report. And now, of course, we know at some point we're going to get that full report because somebody's got their hands on the report and somebody has some incentive to get said report out in public, right? We're going to wind up with the report. We just don't have the report right now. But Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports, he got his hand on some of the report. And in that report, there is a portion in this, remember, 160-page report that we have here. In this, there is a text message exchange where Elliott's accuser was talking to a friend of hers about ways that perhaps they could blackmail Ezekiel Elliott, including perhaps releasing a sex tape. Now, I would like to start by saying, in 2017, you're going to need something a little stronger for blackmail than a sex tape. Just so you know, sex tapes are making people famous these days. You need something just a little bit more damning if you're really going to blackmail somebody. Like if you got a sex tape of a congressman or something like that, or they out here doing some super freaky deaky, then okay, maybe you got a chance here. But by and large, no. The sex tape ain't really going to get you the results that you are looking for. Not in this day and age. The NFL also, by the way, in the report said that the accuser admitted going so far as to register an email address that was titled Ezekiel Elliott Sex Vids. Right. So we have this here at play. Now, of course, I think it is important to say, I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but it is important to say because people don't necessarily do things the right way. Just because you blackmail somebody or was willing to blackmail somebody doesn't mean that that person did not beat you up. However, if I am dealing with a case where I am being asked in large part to take the word of the person who may have been trying to cook up a blackmail plot, yeah, it gets a little bit difficult. NFL got to show and prove, man. Like, that's it. Like, you sent the memo and all this stuff. Okay, you're going to have to tell us what's going on here because you're doing things a lot different in this case than you had done things before. People are going to have fair questions as to how exactly we wound up in this place. Obviously, Jerry Jones is one of those people, except right now, he doesn't want to talk about it.
I don't have anything to say about any of the appeal or anything about that issue today. But certainly I'll be visiting with you guys about it in the future. But right now, today, is just not the time for me to talk about it.
Do you just want more of the process to unfold before you comment on it, Jerry?
Well, really, it's not that. I just really want to have my feet on the ground about it and just have it extremely well planned and thought out.
Are you upset?
Well, again, I don't want to even get into that area right now, and certainly we have the interest in our team and the interest in Zeke in its right place.
Hold on, was that Clarence Hill at the end who asked him if he was upset, knowing damn well Jerry is furious? Right? Like, the only thing I took from that is, like, Jerry's like, if I get you talking about this, I'm going to lose my mind. Right? Like, Jerry is absolutely furious about this. That's where this comes down. But now, where this gets so hard to talk about, right? Because, yeah, there's what happens actually on the field, what happens with the league office stuff, and they'll get that stuff figured out, right? But for me, I think that we get a value as observers here from the discussions that we have here. I think that we have some ways of, like, bringing light to certain ideas and just hearing what people think about things, and I think that there's a positivity that comes from that as a result, right? It is so hard to talk about this. It's so hard to talk about this because I feel like people on both sides are tripping. On one side, we have not even tripping on this side, but there is this, it's kind of a built-in difficulty. And where the difficulty is that overall people have a difficulty believing women. It's not just women in these situations. It's that we have a societal problem with people not taking the words of women. Basically, the words of any marginalized people. The move always is they be lying, right? However, we have evidence that indicates that it is very, 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 very rare that a woman makes up an allegation of being beaten or being raped. That doesn't happen very much. As a result, when somebody does make an accusation, we have a tendency where we're going full bore on defending the accuser, even if we don't necessarily have a great idea of what has gone on. A big part of why we do that with the accusers is we've been so bad with accusers for so long that we need to demonstrate to people when they step forward that at the very least we're willing to entertain what it is that they're talking about. The problem is we're operating in a society where we operate with the initial premise of innocence until proven guilty. Like, that's typically how we start off, except in these cases because we've been way too far on the innocence until proven guilty program. We do have a lot of people who start on the guilty until proven innocent, and their case is one born of statistics. And so by logic, I see where they are coming from. Except we can't do that, right? So, like, I'm on Twitter and I made a point. I'm like, look, this is a tricky situation because I feel like all parties involved have credibility problems. Somebody's like, oh, so what's tricky? You saying football players should just be able to beat people up? Hell no, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that we're in something where there is a measure of ambiguity about what is or is not true. Right? And so it gets tricky on one hand trying to talk there because there are a whole lot of people that don't want to hear any level of equivocation when it comes to a case like this. And I understand where they're coming from, but I value process above all else. Right? And so with the value of process, like, the process has to be dealt with fairly on this. The thing is, though, when I say that this woman has a problem with her credibility, which I think with things that we just pointed out there, like the sex video leak threat or whatever it was, right? Or the thought, not even a thread, but talking about it amongst her friends, that is an issue with her credibility. It does make you raise questions as to whether or not this on her end is a setup. However, the fact that she tried to blackmail the dude on that one thing doesn't mean that he didn't beat her. She might have been mad that he beat her, therefore it's a blackmail. I have no idea. But as soon as we start entertaining the legitimate possibility that there are some shenanigans at play, y'all can't stop from expressing your hatred for women. You just can't help it. And it just comes out. And just the ridiculous things that I heard people say. People saying that people being falsely accused of abuse is a bigger problem than abuse. I had people tell me that one, right? I had people say the problem with this is that a man doesn't have the right to go beat her up. Like, I've heard all those things in the course of this. All of those things. The biggest problem that we have, biggest problem, society's hatred for women. It's not just men's hatred for women. It is all of our hatred for women. There are enough women who are willing to entertain some of the nonsense that it gets to be tricky also. The hatred that we have for women puts women in a place where people do not believe them when they talk, right? And since you operate from that position of hating women, what do you think they think I sound like when I'm saying, but, you know, there do appear to be some credibility issues here? Right. I sound like one of y'all. Because y'all don't know how to act. But that's where we are, right here. Bunch of people with no credibility. And maybe, just maybe one day, we'll find out what happened. And I guess we'll find out what's in that report, one leak at a time.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
We talked about the Ezekiel Elliott suspension just a bit last segment. It's got a little weird today. So Charles Robinson of Yahoo got his hands on portions of the NFL's 160-page report. He put out a portion where Ezekiel Elliott's accuser apparently was going back and forth with her friend about ways to perhaps blackmail Elliott. And so this part has gotten out. I guess this is a move probably made by Zeke's people to try to throw a wrench in the notion of the credibility of the accuser. This is a statement from Joe Lockhart. He is the NFL Executive Vice President of Communications, and he says as follows. Over the past few days, we received multiple reports of the NFLPA spreading derogatory information to the media about the victim in the Ezekiel Elliott discipline case. It's a common tactic to attempt to prove the innocence of the accused by discrediting the victim, in this case, Ms. Thompson, when coming forward to report such abuse. Common or not, these tactics are shameful. Efforts to shame and blame victims are often what prevent people from coming forward to report violence and or seek help in the first place. The accused by discrediting the victim in this. Oh, this is a double print. Sorry. So the big one, yes, common or not, these tactics are shameful. Efforts to shame and blame victims are often what prevent people from coming forward to report violence and or seek help in the first place. And I suppose we give the NFL a round of applause on some, we're trying to do this right this time. Right? Like, I guess that's where we are. They are trying to do this right this time. And what they are saying is correct. Now, at least correct in terms of what often happens with victims and not wanting to come forward. Here's what we have on the other side. The public statement issued on behalf of every NFL owner is a lie. The NFLPA categorically denies the accusations made in this statement. We know the league office has a history of being exposed for its lack of credibility. This is another example of the NFL's hypocrisy on display in an attempt to create a sideshow to distract from their own failings in dealing with such serious issues. They should be ashamed for stooping to new lows. Slap fight has begun. Now, of course, this gets to be a little bit uncomfortable when you talk about these two sides having a slap fight because it's kind of sort of a matter of principle in terms of how a union deals with the bosses on the other side. At the same time, it also is about what is, at least on its face, a very, very serious matter, and there's a woman's life and experience that is allegedly, at the very least, in the middle of this, and it does feel weird when there's a battle going on back and forth with them where it's really not about the person in the middle, but everybody's pretending as though it is, right? Now, I don't know if the NFLPA is lying about any of this or not. I do have this question, though. Like, people have made the argument that somehow Zeke needs to be able to prove that he did not assault this woman, and I don't know how you do that. Like functionally speaking, I don't know how you assert a negative in this particular case unless there's some level of alibi that he could provide. I really don't know how he could do that. Now, that's not to say that I think he did not do what he was accused of. I'm just saying that burden of proof there where he has to prove he didn't do it. None of us want to wind up in that sort of place. Right? None of us want to wind up in that situation. Like, it's functionally flawed, but it's also just kind of wildly unfair, that idea. Well, prove to me that you didn't do it. No. That's not the way that we want to play this game. On the other side, I think the NFL makes a fair point that very often victims are discredited in this way, and this is what dissuades victims very often from coming forward. However, if most of this hinges on the word of the accuser, I don't know what other approach there is to take to defend yourself other than to discredit the accuser. Right? Now, I'm not here for the idea of like discrediting an accuser based on things that don't really have anything to do with what we're talking about, right? So if it's just like, hey, she says I beat her, yeah, but let me tell you about all these dudes that she done got down with. Well, yeah, now we got a problem there. Like, discrediting the accuser in that way is a bit problematic. But if we're being fair, what else are they supposed to do? Like, I saw something yesterday, it was this morning, from a lawyer in Durham who was talking about how he became a criminal defense attorney. And he was just talking about how he has these people who look at him and they don't understand how in the world he could ever be a defense attorney or how he could sleep at night being a defense attorney. And I'm like, wow, people really feel that? Like, there is some right that you have, at least within the criminal justice system. Now, the NFL's thing is not the criminal justice system, but you got a right to defend yourself. And I'll never be one that infringes upon somebody's right to defend themselves. I also think that the rights of the accusers in this case do matter, and what happens with them does matter. And we have larger macro issues where we do want to create a set of circumstances where it is conducive for people to come and talk about the things that have happened to them. We do want that. But if I'm the one that you saying did it, and I think you're lying, then we about to discredit you. As would be the case with anybody in that situation, and by the way, which is kind of the reasonable expectation once it goes there. Now, I've said before, and I will say this again, if Ezekiel Elliott is lying, he is a lowlife. Like, there's no other way around that. Like, if he's lying and he's pushing this in this way to protect a lie, he is a particular sort of lowlife. And there should be no way that we ever square up and look him in the eye ever again if he is really pushing this as a lie. I don't know from where I sit whether or not he's lying. I don't know from where I sit whether she's lying. I don't know from where I sit whether the NFL is the people I can trust to determine whether or not all this truth is happening. Like, I don't know anything that's going on here. So we got a 6-game suspension, and that brings us here for a sports reason, because this could drastically alter the landscape of the NFL, which, I mean, if we're being honest, the reason why you listen to this radio station is because you care about the landscape of the NFL. So, like, this does wind up mattering in the most trivial way that I understand is the thing that you find to be most important in many cases. Like, that's how you wind up here. I get that. But I don't know what's going on with it. I don't know how this is ultimately going to be resolved. There's going to be an appeal with Harold Henderson. We've seen him uphold suspensions on appeal. We've seen him cut suspensions down on appeal. I don't have a great answer for what it is that Harold Henderson is ultimately going to do there. I don't know how this is going to be resolved. I don't know what the answers are going to be. And part of why I don't know what the answers are going to be is I don't really have a great idea what the answers should be. Like, this is probably going to shake out at the end, and if I don't get a whole lot more information, I'm just going to be in a place where I'm forced to take everybody's word. Or fine one person. I don't know, right? But a suspension or a penalty is going to come down, and then we're going to go from there. I'll give you this to consider, though, before we go to break. I contend that regardless of what happened here with the woman in Columbus, pulling the woman's top down at the St. Patrick's Day parade, that was enough for Ezekiel Elliott to be suspended by itself. Like, he need to get himself in check no matter what it is, right? That was enough to me for a suspension in and of itself. And Jim Trotter made a good point yesterday when he had him on, when we had him on. Where he's like, look, if he did what he was accused of, you're going to have to explain to me how he only got 6 if 6 is the minimum. But there's that NFL. You never know quite what they're doing, which is why they can't be trusted. We got one person that may have been trying to run a shakedown. I don't know how I'm supposed to trust her. And I sure as hell don't trust Zeke. Yet somebody's going to give me an answer that all of us, I guess, ultimately are going to have to live with.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Our guest joining us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, just like our next guest. He's an NFL insider for us here at ESPN. His name is Field Yates. All right, Field, Harold Henderson is going to oversee the appeal Ezekiel Elliott will be putting through. Like, what do you think the chances are that Henderson reduces it?
I'd say that, first blush, Bomani, I would say it's unlikely. And I know that people are saying, hey, this is the same man who reduced Greg Hardy's suspension from 10 games to 4 games. Maybe that breathes life into the case for Ezekiel Elliott. I think that things we're at a different point now with domestic violence policies in place for the NFL compared to where we were when Greg Hardy's case was in focus. And, I understand that there's a system in place that allows players to challenge penalties. I also believe that the NFL has felt like it has, probably in the court of public opinion, erred on some of these penalties that have taken place in recent years, whether it was Ray Rice, whether it was the Greg Hardy situation itself, whether it was the way that the Tom Brady Deflategate matter was conducted, which makes me believe that the NFL feels pretty firm in its stance right now that 6 games is the appropriate measure for Ezekiel Elliott.
Now, do you expect that we'll wind up in court?
Put it this way, nothing would surprise me here. We understand that Ezekiel Elliott and his team and the NFLPA are prepared to exhaust any measures to have this suspension overturned. Is a court date inevitable? Hard to say that, but if we understand that that's sort of their working frame of mind, that they're going to do whatever it takes and they'll exhaust every tool they have in the shed, then I guess I wouldn't be surprised. I think what we've learned over the past handful of years is that no twist or turn in this matter should come as entirely unforeseen. Anything truly can happen.
All right, talking to Phil Yates of ESPN here on The Right Time. What do you think about the dueling statements that the league and the PA put out today?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, it's a bad look. I would just say, generally speaking, the NFL and the NFLPA have a dicey relationship. I don't think that's some sort of private matter. People understand the two sides rarely see eye to eye in some areas today. But, I think that there's a certain maturity that I would hope both sides can deal with privately and also publicly. And it felt like both sides were sort of jockeying to get a leg up in the court of public opinion today, which I understand why that matters. But at the end of the day, what should matter is evidence the NFL has collected and all the incident details that they have and the NFLPA's case for Ezekiel Elliott. That's what should matter in determining the punishment for him, not how you can sway people with back and forth, statements put out on Twitter.
All right, talking to Phil Yates of ESPN here on The Right Time. Now, switching gears a little bit, if we were to look just at the football element of this, how much does it matter for the Cowboys losing Zeke for 6 games?
It matters. It matters in a significant way. And listen, I've seen the stats that show the sample size of, certain stats that apply to Dak Prescott specifically when Zeke Elliott wasn't on the field last season. I would say that it is different to prepare for a game when you know you're going to be without a player for the entirety of it versus having to pick things up on the fly in the course of the game. Certainly, Dak Prescott was, I don't want to say without pressure last year, but had a lot of surrounding factors that worked in his favor. Terrific offensive line, a dominant running game. So I don't want to say that he wasn't dealing with pressure. I would say that the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys innately deals with pressure. But I would also look back at that playoff game against the Green Bay Packers. The team did not win, but when they were playing from behind and they had an un-Cowboy-like circumstance with them last year, and Dak Prescott darn nearly overcame that deficit, that multiple score deficit on his own. And if not for the utter brilliance of Aaron Rodgers and that miracle catch by Jared Cook, the Cowboys would have been in the NFC Championship game.
Now, the thing is, the offensive line is so great. So if we're talking about Darren McFadden or Alfred Morris, what can you expect from them?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think it's clearly Darren McFadden as the backup here. I wouldn't be stunned if Alfred Morris didn't necessarily make the team. I mean, I know that we have a long way to go before the end of the preseason. But I do believe that it'll be Darren McFadden that runs as the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys to begin this year. Expectations are this. Yeah, it's still going to be a very functional running game. I just think the explosive plays that are going to be there when Zeke Elliott's on the field won't be there. And running back yardage is often broken down by coaches as the yards you'd expect them to get based off of the blocking and the yards you expect them to get after the blocking. And Zeke Elliott was able to chew up so many of those ladder yards, the yards that, making defenders miss the second and third level or running around or through defenders. And I'm just not so sure that Darren McFadden offers anything close to that, even though he had a 1,000-yard season just 2 years ago. So, yeah, it's a significant downgrade. There's a reason why the Cowboys used the 4th pick on Zeke last year.
Almost sounded like this could be the year that Darren McFadden puts it all together.
How many years are we waiting for that one?
Oh, boy, you have no idea, buddy. You have no idea. Right? Basically, we're talking to Field Yates of ESPN here on The Right Time. The Patriots picked up Brandon Cooks. They got him with a late first-round pick. How much does he help that offense?
It's scary to think for an offense that last year finished third in total points per game, and that included the game where they were just like, you know something, we're going to abstain from scoring when they were shut out by the Buffalo Bills in the lone loss they had prior to Tom Brady's return from his 4-game suspension. I understand people are saying, do they need him? They already had such an incredible passing game. Well, they did. I mean, if you think about the elements that he brings to this passing game that they didn't previously have, just absolutely incredible speed. He is a player that we think of vertical threats often in the quote-unquote Randy Moss mold. Not that they had Randy's ability, but that 6'3" or taller and 200 or so or plus pounder. Brandon Cooks, though, because of his speed alone and his ability to avoid contact at the line of scrimmage, he can be the vertical threat for this Patriots offense that they got from Chris Hogan last year, but this is just a superior version. And we also know the Patriots are going to throw a bunch of screens at or near the line of scrimmage for their wide receivers, and I can just imagine how many ankles could be broken with Brandon Cooks. This offense, to me, seems like a steady bet to lead the NFL in points per game and passing yards.
Well, I think you make an interesting point is that the short passing game is cool with those impish receivers, but you do need a vertical threat, right? Like, I think that gets lost. What you can do in the regular season is not the same as what you can do in the postseason.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, think about how a defense, like if a defense has no threat of a vertical passing game, then it's like, all right, listen, we're going to find a way to bring Julian Edelman or somebody else down. It may not be right at the line of scrimmage, but it's going to be 7 yards as opposed to 17 yards. Well, you introduce Brandon Cooks, and all of a sudden you have to account for different sections of the 53 1/3 wide and 100-yard long football field. So, yeah, I think this Patriots offense has basically every ingredient that you would want out of a high-octane offense. I think the biggest question really is, do they rely on one running back to kind of presume or assume the LeGarrette Blount role, or is it sort of a committee that each week you're getting something different, and that alone keeps defenses on their heels?
All right, that's Field Yates, NFL insider here at ESPN. Thanks so much, my man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bomani.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
So LeBron been out here playing pickup ball. I don't really understand what it is you got to do to get onto the court in these pickup games. So, yeah, like Kevin Durant out there in the pickup games, Shannon Mello out there in the games.
Hoodie Mello.
Yeah, Hoodie Mello's out there. I feel like a couple of other good players. But then they're also letting Lance Thomas and Marshall Plumlee play. Do I have that right?
Tape.
Didn't J.R. Smith bring his little brother to play? Like, I mean, I feel like those are the dudes that'll get you injured playing in pickup ball. LeBron gonna mess up and have the first injury ever. Why? Tripped over Marshall Plumlee's foot, dislocated my ankle. That's how that tends to go. But anyway, LeBron's been doing that. Bron also went to a charity event last night. He was on stage with a cute little girl, rough and stuff, with her Afro puffs. Yeah, does anybody ever look more unbothered, Shannon, than Lil Zuri? She appears not to trip on anything.
She is ready for all of this.
Yeah, she just posted. She's like, yeah, I'm here, man, whatever. Yeah, I'm here to look cute. Yeah, daddy, hold me. That's good. Yeah, show me off to the people. Okay, whatever. So LeBron's on stage, and he's up there, and I remember J.R. Smith was on the stage, and Usher was there. Shannon, Usher's doing public appearances?
Good to see him out there amongst the people again.
Yeah, I didn't expect that. Hey, Usher. I was like, Usher, we'll talk to you about something. Usher, is there anything you want to say that'll stick around forever? Anyway, here's what LeBron had to say at the charity event.
I have this platform, and I'm somebody that has a voice of command, and the only way for us to be able to get better as a society and us to get better as people is love, and that's the only way we're going to be able to conquer something at the end of the day. it's not about the guy that's the so-called president of the United States or whatever the case. It's not about a teacher that you don't feel like care about what's going on with you every day. It's not about people that you just don't feel like that's want to give the best energy and effort to you. It's about us. It's about us looking in the mirror. Kids all the way up to the adults, about all of us looking in the mirror and saying, what can we do better to help change?
Great job, right? Like, I want to be clear. It is a very, very well-meaning sort of thing that LeBron did there. Thing is, LeBron basically hit y'all with who want ice cream, right? Everybody loves ice cream. Everybody loves love, right? Everybody loves love. So you are very quick to put forth out there the idea of like, well, look, we just all need to love each other. And that is always going to get you a round of applause. Because who's the people that's like, man, love, bump that. No, man, everybody gets down with the we need more love out here. There's so many songs out here about the we need more love. Now, we talked about this a little earlier in the week. I like making Bob Marley comparisons. There's a whole lot of people who think they love Bob Marley, but what they really know about the Bob Marley is the one love. Like, if your favorite Bob Marley album is Exodus, there's a good possibility that you absolutely love LeBron. It's like, we just need to love each other a little bit more. That's all we need. But see, there's a bit of effort made to make Bob Marley into the one love guy, and that tends to avoid the them belly full but we hungry Bob Marley, the crazy bald head Bob Marley, the one with a little bit more edge to it, right? That's when people start getting a little bit uncomfortable with this, right? Africa Unite, the Ride Not to Ride, yeah, that goes over a little bit differently than the one love. Y'all love that when y'all get to the resorts, right? Like, yeah, let's get together and feel all right. Except here's what the problem is that we got out here in these streets, man. You saw what's going on there in Charlottesville. The problem is not the absence of love. The problem is the presence of hate. So the idea that you're going to eradicate this hate with love, nah. That's really not what it is that we need to hear right now. Now, understand this, like with Martin Luther King, who the basis of everything he did was love, don't get me wrong, like love as a philosophy was the fundamental underpinning of what King did. Now, the thing about King, though, King was saying, love your enemy, like pretty explicitly, which was King being like, look, they don't deserve your love, but give it to them anyway because you are bigger than them, and that love will power you basically as we set this course and we take all this abuse in order to make this happen, right? That it had to be done from the notion of we come from this position of love and we love the people who treat us so badly, and that ultimately they will then be ashamed of the way that they behave, right? And once that shame creeps in, then our love will conquer them. That's the notion for King. But see, King went to Chicago, and then he got up there and realized, whoa, what happens when they're shameless, right? What happens when shame no longer works? What happens when you can put people face to face with how awful they are being, and they look back and be like, yeah, that's me. And that was where King didn't know what to do, right? That's when, like, the things got really tricky for him. He did not know what to do when dealing with someone who was incapable of shame. So, like, when LeBron gets out and talks about, yeah, man, I just, we need to look in the mirror, become better people, and then we need to just love one another a little bit more. No, man, what we need, and by we, I mean people like me, and you can determine what kind of people they are on any sort of level. What I need is for people to stop hating me for the mere fact that I exist. Like, that's what we need. So when you tell everybody to love each other, what you do there is nobody's actually wrong. Like, yeah, he said something about Trump. And it's like, oh, I had people in my mentions a little while ago because I said on How They Question, but I was like, LeBron didn't say anything there, and I don't think he said anything. And like, he did say something. He denounced the president. The president has an approval rating in the 30s. Like, this is not hard to do. Like, saying something bad about Donald Trump is not the most courageous thing in the world to do. Now, somebody might be like, I don't see you saying nothing bad about Donald Trump. You are correct. My bosses frown upon that sort of thing, and I'm on their airwaves. Right? No, I don't. I'm very careful about the way that I go about doing this. LeBron got all the juice in the world, man. Saying something bad about Trump or saying that he's the so-called president, again, his approval rating is in the 30s. This is not a position that puts you on the side of being unpopular. What does run the risk for you of being unpopular is saying what we need here is for people to stop hating us, right? And I don't feel like the standard that you should have to treat me with a basis of respect is that I got to love you. I got all kinds of people I can't stand that I treat with respect. I got all kinds of people I don't like whose humanity I manage to respect and honor and dignify because that's just what you're supposed to do. I am not willing to tell you that I love you in order to get you to treat me right. That's asking for way too much. Like, you treat me like boo-boo, and then I'm supposed to say I love you, and then you be like, oh, okay, now I'll treat you okay. No, I refuse. That's not what it is. That's not how it goes. I don't operate from that initial point on a philosophy. I operate from, hey, man, how about you just treat people with respect? I don't care about how you feel about me. I care about whether or not you treat me with respect. And what seems to be apparent is a distinct lack of respect for those who have done nothing to merit losing it. Now, some people have definitely done enough to like, no, you are not worthy of my respect. Like, I ain't out here saying, like, yo, you need to show the Nazis some respect. No, ain't no respect for that. There shouldn't be any measure of respect for that. But I'm asking those jokers when they show up, like, what's your beef? Who do you have a problem with? How have you determined that these other people are so unworthy of your respect? Like, how did you determine that those people are unworthy of basic human dignity? And when you start squaring up with people like that, then I feel like we start getting somewhere. And when you start doing that, that's when people start getting a little bit uncomfortable, right? So when it's like we all need to love each other, it becomes a we, it becomes an all. And very rarely does anybody have to do any real level of personal introspection, right? It becomes about, yeah, as a society. No. LeBron, LeBron in that says that you all need to look in the mirror and yeah, whatever. No, what needs to happen is we have a society that has largely been based on hating groups of people. Stop doing that, right? And if you are in the group that is of the privileged position where somebody actually like really listens to you when you talk about this, then get out here and say something and tell people to stop doing this. But our problem is not a lack of love. Our problem is an abundance of hate. And I feel like in a position where LeBron is, we need to talk more about the root cause of this hate, which is racism, than just saying, come on, guys, let's just love each other. We'll realize that not everybody, that people aren't so bad. Nah, man, shake your insecurities just a little bit and ask yourself why you cling to this racism so tight. Like, ask yourself why the one thing you feel like you got in this world that you can lord over people is the color of your skin. Then you got a chance of, like, actually creating some level of solution. But we just need to love each other more. Psh, man, please, the people who love you hurt you the most all the time. Then you know what they do? They come up to you and they ask you to forgive them. Why? Because you know I love you, right? I don't know that you love me. Just show me some respect and we good.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
All guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Just like our next guest, he covers the NFL for Yahoo Sports. His name is Charles Robinson. Now, Charles, Yahoo reported that in the 160-page report that the NFL put together about the Ezekiel Elliott situation, that there was a text message exchange between the accuser and one of her friends where she seemed to ballpark the idea of blackmailing Ezekiel Elliott. How did that go down?
Well, essentially what happened was, and as you said, this is something that was in the NFL investigators' 160-page report. On September 21st of 2016, a friend of Tiffany Thompson, who is the woman who's alleging that Ezekiel Elliott committed domestic violence against her, a friend of Tiffany Thompson and Tiffany were text messaging each other. And at one point they're talking about money and, you know, needing to make some money. And Tiffany Thompson floats the idea or texts essentially, what if I sold the sex videos of Ezekiel and I? And the friend essentially replies, you know, that's something we could blackmail him with. And Tiffany Thompson replies, you know, I want to, but I'm scared. And, you know, so this kind of goes back and forth. And at one point, you know, the friend says, you know, you might be able to get $10,000 out of that, or I'd ask for $10,000. Tiffany Thompson says, you know, essentially forget that, $20,000, go big or go home, which all in and of itself is not a great text message conversation to have. But beyond that, Tiffany Thompson had also registered an email address the month before that was under the heading Ezekiel Elliott Sex Vids. And you combine those two things. They both appeared in the NFL's reports, and the NFL came across them because they did a forensic scrape of Tiffany Thompson's phone, which is essentially you pull all the data you can get off of it regarding like text messages, emails, things of that nature. And they came across this, and it was something that I think once they came across it, they had to go ask Tiffany Thompson, hey, we found this on your phone. You got to address it. And it was handled pretty briefly in the league's 160-page investigation, but they essentially said that Tiffany Thompson admitted having these videos, admitted registering the email account, but never intended to actually blackmail Ezekiel Elliott with the sex videos. And look, the reason why this is relevant right now is because this is going to an appeal, and it's a he said, she said situation. And in those situations, each side tries to undermine the credibility of the other side. So Ezekiel Elliott's appeal is going to be built around what credibility or lack of credibility does Tiffany Thompson have, and that text message exchange is going to be part of the aggregate in which they hope to prove that she's lacking credibility and she did have motive to essentially accuse him of domestic violence.
Now, do we have any idea how the NFL weighed this detail while they were making their decision? Because apparently to them, this was not enough to make them think that she was lying about the incident of violence.
We don't. I mean, that's part of the problem, is that this process lacks transparency, although I will say that the NFL has been a little more transparent in this case, particularly with some of the evidence, than it was with Greg Hardy and also Adrian Peterson. They were a little more expansive when they suspended Ezekiel Elliott for the 6 games. But in totality, what the NFL said was, look, we know that Tiffany Thompson made some mistakes. They referenced this incident she had with the Columbus Police Department where she was essentially caught misleading investigators. And then, there was an affidavit signed where she appeared to coerce another witness into lying to police officers about a domestic incident that actually didn't occur. And, so the league said, look, we know that there were other things that arose regarding her credibility. But at the end of the day, the information we got off of her phone, the metadata, the photos, and her accounts, we believe in totality was more believable than what Ezekiel Elliott came up with in terms of his defense. So we believe her. So it rests on logic, but it's still he said, she said.
We're talking to Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports here on The Right Time. And do we know much about what Ezekiel Elliott's defense was?
In terms of, the NFL did expand on that a little bit. The NFL said we gave Ezekiel Elliott's side essentially opportunities to say, how did, during this week's time where Ezekiel Elliott and Tiffany Thompson shared a room together, how was it that Tiffany Thompson was appearing with all these bruises and marks on her body? She was by taking tagged in the metadata that I actually did take this on June 18th, and Ezekiel Elliott and I were sharing a room at that time. They essentially went to Ezekiel Elliott's side and said, tell us why. How did this happen? And Ezekiel Elliott's side, their response was, we don't know. Like, how are we supposed to prove that? Like, we have no idea. But they said maybe she fell down some stairs. She waits tables. Maybe she ran into tables. Here are some things we think maybe could have happened that put the bruises on her body. But otherwise, we don't really have reasoning for that. And the NFL said, well, that's not good enough. There's no witnesses to her falling downstairs. There's no witnesses to her running into tables. You lack witnesses for your reasoning, and that's part of the reason why we believe Tiffany Thompson. But, Elliott's side said, well, you don't have a witness for her actually being struck by Ezekiel Elliott. You don't have a witness for the things she's alleging. So aren't you essentially in the same boat we are? We don't have witnesses for the marks. You don't actually have witnesses for the marks. The only witness you have is Tiffany Thompson saying it happened. The only witness we have is Ezekiel Elliott saying it didn't happen. That's how we arrived at the point we're at now, which is both sides essentially trying to build an infrastructure of the credibility or lack of credibility of the other party.
All right, talking to Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports here on The Right Time. Now, procedurally, how does this appeal work with Harold Henderson? Because I think for a lot of people, it seems almost strange that the NFL gets to oversee the appeal when the NFL is the body that laid down the punishment.
Right. Procedurally, because of the CBA's rules, Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, has the opportunity to either oversee the process himself, he can designate an arbitrator, and that arbitrator could be someone of, Harold Henderson, who has handled these arbitration cases in the past, which is, he did the Greg Hardy case, he did the Adrian Peterson case, or he could have gone essentially, quote unquote, outside and chosen an independent arbitrator, someone who has no ties whatsoever to the NFLPA. Harold Henderson's an ex-NFL executive, so he could have gone outside and say gotten a judge or gotten a prosecutor, someone of that ilk to oversee it. Instead, he chose Harold Henderson. Now, what happens at the end of this month? I think I want to say August 28th or 29th. The parties will gather. There will be a hearing in which all the evidence is laid out, including, Ezekiel Elliott will be asked to attend this hearing. Tiffany Thompson, there's a chance that she could have to attend this hearing, and essentially all the evidence will be weighed once again in front of an arbitrator, and they will come back and decide, do we agree with the 6-game suspension? Do we agree that with the NFL's opinion that it's more likely than not the domestic violence occurred in this case, and that will determine essentially whether or not Ezekiel Elliott's suspension stands.
All right, that's Charles Robinson. Check him out at Yahoo Sports covering the NFL. My man, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bo.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
I got the homie Pablo Torre posted up in his American Ballet Theater T-shirt because he's classy.
Hello.
I mean, it is classy.
I am a classy person. I got this at the ballet. I'm not like on eBay trying to buy classy clothes.
I mean, I didn't think you were fronting necessarily. I meant this as being like actually reflective of your personality. So we got an extra half hour here to do. What would you like to talk about?
Well, I think we just brought up inadvertently the concept of an auction. The eBay reference.
Yeah, we did. Is that what you want to talk about?
Real quick. Can I talk about something real quick on that?
I mean, if that's what you want to talk about.
And then we can talk about other things.
Yes.
So, people forgot that other people don't know what an auction draft is.
That's the long and the short, yes.
Okay. Because, I mean, there are two types of not knowing stuff here. Like, let's say everyone's here in a world of good intentions. And for our employers, by the way, like, they've handled this well. They apologized. All that is cool by me. But in terms of what obligations does anyone have in this scenario, there's the one group of people that didn't know about auction drafts, and there's the other group of people that didn't know about people who didn't know about auction drafts, but also knew about slavery.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I think the general idea that we have here about like the notion of auction draft is it is very, very careful. Very, very easy it is. That is to say, if you are someone who does fantasy football for real and you do the fantasy football for real with all your friends, you then think that everybody really does fantasy football for real, right? And so it's just like, of course, it's an auction draft. And I would propose maybe what, about 10% of the fantasy football playing public knows what an auction draft is?
Here's the thing. I love auction drafts. I do. They're more fun than normal snake format fantasy leagues.
Yes.
But not until I joined an AL-only auction league.
Oh, what a dork move.
Right. So I'm like caring about and bidding on backup catchers, right? That's that kind of a league. It's totally, it's a league that I stopped paying attention to almost immediately, but I have a partner, so there's that kind of dynamic. But not until you do that do you realize, oh, this is like an intense owned subculture of this thing. No one should expect that to be a normal scene at any fantasy draft.
Yeah, but no matter what you do, and I mean, I know how this happens. No matter what you do, there is somebody in that group who doesn't, like, you get caught in it. Like, you don't realize that there's a world that happens to be outside of it. My surprise is that nobody has seen Get Out. Like, that was mine. Like, yes, I didn't think you needed to go any further. That was Get Out. This actually got me thinking fantasy draft time is coming up. How many leagues you play?
I think because we're co-hosting a show together, I think I'm going to join one hardcore league and live through that.
I only do one league. I talked about this yesterday. I only do one league. Part of why I only do one league is A, time, and B, once I get into leagues that are outside of people I already know, I am basically then in that league to be objectified. right? Like that's it.
There is that
just
particular dynamic to you. But I also asked, do you have multiple NCAA brackets?
No, I do one.
I feel like that is a disgrace as a concept.
I do.
Like, what are we here for?
I do one because, like, how many times do I want to be wrong?
Yes, absolutely that. But also, what are we trying to achieve here? Like, the goal isn't to actually win the game. The goal is to see how many you get right. And if you just do that 10 times, like, you're defeating the whole point of this.
Yeah, we're talking to Pablo Torre here on the right time. But no. I don't care that much about winning these things. It's just not that important to me. And again, I'm not getting into your bracket pool because, like, I hate doing the Around the Horn bracket pool. Compete against your favorite TV people. Chances are you're going to beat me. Right? This is just how it works. We're all out here guessing. And if we want to illustrate the idea that we're all out here guessing via my mediocre scores, I'm okay with that. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is we are objectifying me and my score, and I don't get to have any fun in this because I'm not really here for getting clowned by strangers. We're not cool like that.
Because you're being beaten by Woody Page's mom.
See, I can live with that. I can live with that because she ain't saying nothing about it. These other jokers that are pulling these brackets out of their keisters and they know that's what they doing, and now you want to get up in my face. I'm not here for that. I'm not. That's the one thing about this job. I don't get a lot of pats on the back when I'm right, but oh, buddy, do I hear from them when I'm wrong.
In defense of our critics, though, there is a hilarious thing where no one. I mean, well, you know what? You stand in defiance of this, actually. I was about to say that you can just throw predictions out there, shoot them into the air like an AK-47, and no one's going to actually see the aftermath of those predictions. You have the particular pleasure of being held to account.
Oh, they're ready for me.
These opinions.
They're ready for me, man. There's a whole lot of people who sit around here every day, and the thing that they are looking forward to more than anything else is, I hope Bomani's wrong about something. I could be wrong about something that could be a matter of life and death and national security, but as long as I'm wrong, there's going to be people that's like, about time. About time. You know this.
We are signing up for the job of human piñata, whether we like it or not. And in this case, I prefer not.
And that's why I reject predictions, just as a general notion and rule. Like, if I give you a prediction, I mean it, right? I ain't just out here for this because I just can't have... Look, and I'm not allowed to respond in kind like I want. Like, I think a lot of people think that I respond to people however I want. Oh, buddy, you got no idea the things I actually want to say to people. No, sirree, Bob.
This is the thing that's misleading about your online activity, is that people are mistaking volume for a full reflection of your intent.
Yes.
And you intend a lot more.
Look, man, I get a lot of people, they sign up, I drill them. You know, I used to run another account where I was much harder on the haters, but after I got the job here, after I got the job here, I decided, I'm going to go ahead and let that go. I even talked to a fairly significant executive about the account. He said he really liked it, but that's when I didn't work here. Right, so I was just like, yeah, that one's not worth the fight. I'll leave it alone. But people just be coming at me, man. I feel like I'm a really polite guy who minds his own business until y'all come at me. Then I got to talk about your moms.
It is a sign of, I think, a perhaps surprising respect on your behalf towards these people. They should feel pretty good about that.
Yes, I treat them like I treat anybody else.
Right. You're giving them your time.
Yes. Right, like if you want to be part of the show, you can be part of the show. I just ask you be respectful. That's the only thing I ask for, is that you be respectful.
Yeah, you have like a code of honor, and I have the ability to just lurk forever and just watch.
Yes.
That's the thing. That's the what are those exercises? Kegels?
I'm familiar.
But just the idea that I'm just clenching.
Oh.
I'm like preventing myself from more volume because I fear the world that you have built, because you do treat it with a level of respect that I don't actually think people appreciate.
Yeah. No, I mean, they learn to appreciate it. When the hammer comes, the appreciation level goes sky high. And we are talking to Pablo Torre here of ESPN, the magazine. We did Highly Questionable for 3 days down here. We did Highly Questionable yesterday on ESPN News, which means it's basically like, hey, how'd you like to do a TV show nobody's going to watch?
Yeah, that's about right.
Which is a really ironic notion, right? Like, you feel it while you're there, just like nobody's going to watch this.
I enjoyed myself, but yes. Also, by the way, we've emerged, I've realized, over the last set of shows we've co-hosted together, that we're like pretty hard graders on these athletes giving speeches stuff.
Kind of, yeah.
And I want to embrace that.
Well, okay. Here's where I am. And you're talking about LeBron, and he's, kumbaya, and, all we need is love. Love is all we need, and that one always goes over really well, right? Like, that's who wants ice cream of social discussion. Like, everybody wants ice cream. He's always, like, he was there to dish out the ice cream in this situation. And I guess the cherry on top is he took a shot at Trump, which, I mean, you're dealing with a president with anemic approval ratings. Therefore, this is what you're going to have. Okay, I get that. The only thing is, man, this, when are we going to start loving each other? Okay, so what happens if we don't love each other? We need to have some means in place for that. Like, I don't require people love me. I don't need everybody to love me. I don't need everybody to love each other. I need you to stop messing with me, right? Like, that's what I need. This, look in the mirror and now you love me and love each. No. My standards aren't that high. Never have, never will. Just stop treating me bad.
But this is one of those instances where asking for neutrality, asking for literally nothing, is seen as aggressive. How dare you step on the nice love each other banner we just hung up in the back of the room?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. You know what those are? Those are people that listen to Bob Marley but only listen to Legend. Like that's who they are. Like that's who those people are. They're the people that listen to Bob but only listen to Legend, and they just want to sing One Love over and over and over and over and over again. Like, that's what they want to do. Nah, man, that's not the thing that's going to get it done. But what that is that's one that makes white people comfortable, right? And that's the bottom line on this. And I have a long-standing theory on this. That is, you are not going to have a productive discussion on race if you are primarily concerned with making white people comfortable. It's not possible.
And their comfort oftentimes, many people's comfort oftentimes relies on not identifying what the problem is.
Yes.
That's a pretty good tell.
Well, it's not even not identifying what the problem is. They know what the problem is.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
We were just talking about LeBron and his speech about, where we need to come to love each other. And you made a good point that, yes, we are hard graders on athlete speeches, that we are the ones that trample on their message. Now, I'm going to tell you my philosophy on this, and I want to see if yours is at all in line with it. Mm-hmm. My philosophy on these things is it's kind of like, okay, you ever listen to Dead Prez, or are you too young to really have been at the Dead Prez era?
I mean, I am too young.
Okay.
I respect the institution.
Yeah, well, I don't even know if I do necessarily, but here's my thing with Dead Prez, is that Dead Prez has some really dope records. They were kind of fiery and angry. They had that quality to them. But the thing was, they wasn't always making sense. And so on one level, yes, there's but so much I should expect in terms of like the intellectualism and the epistemology that is being used by a musician, right? Like there's no barrier there that says that they have to be able to pass some test. But once you decide you're going to be this guy, then I feel like I get to hold you to the scrutiny that comes from making the decision that you're going to go in that direction. So that's how I felt about the Banana Boat speech at the ESPYs.
Right.
LaDainian Tomlinson at the Hall of Fame, where I feel like all those guys had the best of intentions. But Nilomo.
We are hard graders. And we're hard graders in a time when...
Are we really hard graders, or are other people easy graders?
We're hard graders at a time when everyone is grading on a curve.
There we go.
The bar's low. The bar is real low. And not only is the bar low, but the platform that these guys have is legitimate. It's huge. LeBron James, if you're doing a power rankings of people who can create headlines out of thin air, LeBron James is on the short list of people who, through speech and through ideas, will cause some discussion, a public discussion. And so he has the ability. I mean, when he said, I have a voice of command, that sounded weirdly kind of like government military phraseology. But at the same time, it was kind of true. When he talks, people listen. And that was phrased inartfully. But where we come in is pointing out that the guy does sound like someone who is pointing to Trump and saying, this guy sucks, and then saying, who wants a pizza party?
Yes.
When you're running for student council and you're promising pizza parties, like, yeah, that sounds great. We all love pizza. We all want love. It's how do we pay for the pizza?
Yes.
How do we deliver the pizza to us right now?
Right, which you don't think of when you're a student, when you're in middle school. But
you
apparently,
just want the pizza.
Yeah, but apparently people aren't thinking of right now. So this is what I wondered about LeBron. We're talking to Pablo Torre here on The Right Time. You remember as they were going for, I forget which championship. They only won one. I can't remember if it was the first year or the second year, right? Since he returned, and he talked about having this secret motivation, and he didn't tell anybody what the secret motivation was.
Right.
And I had always hoped quietly that he was going to win this championship and get the Finals MVP, and then grab the mic and say, "I'm back in Cleveland, And this one's for Tamir Rice.
Oh, man, that would have been
right. But
30 for 30.
But what would have happened, right? Because we're talking about LeBron James here. What would have happened? What beef would anybody have been able to take up with LeBron James after he brought the elusive championship to Cleveland that they've been waiting on since 1964? What would have happened if he had done that? And I say that because, look, LeBron may mean exactly what he says about this we just need to love one another thing. But if LeBron means more, if he goes to a different place in this, how far could he go before it turned into any level of problem?
So I do think it's important for us to say that LeBron is doing stuff.
Yes,
putting money in ways that others are not into causes that have real ties to everything we're discussing. So that is a given for context, people who are listening. But, and this is where the hard grader comes in again, in terms of what LeBron James has been saying, he's been light on specifics. And that seems a calculated thing. And so when, Bomani, you bring up the question of if he were to say in that hypothetical, this is for Tamir Rice, the answer to that question is it's self-contingent on, is he going to be playing for the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Yeah.
Like, which is to say that none of this has to do with the actual principle at hand, right? LeBron is valuable to us as a speaker in part because he can reach the red state voter.
Right.
But that connection and that reach is itself contingent on whether he is doing them a solid and playing on their basketball team.
Yeah, there's that, and there's also the weird thing is there's no direct linear relationship to how people are going to feel about any particular statement that anybody makes, right? So why exactly is it that people are angrier with Colin Kaepernick than they are, say, with Michael Bennett? Now, I think my argument on that one is, unlike basically the league gave permission post-Kaepernick. Bennett is kind of grandfathered in on that. Kaepernick did not ask for permission. Not that he needed to necessarily, but he did not ask for permission. And that's part of the problem that people wind up having with him. I don't know what the standard is on LeBron because there's so many people who do, in fact, hate LeBron. But there are also people who hate LeBron who would come to love him if he did that. And then vice versa. There are those who love him who would then come around on the other side to hate him. But I just really wonder what it would be if someone of his or a similar stature were to do something like that. Then what happens, right? Then where does it go? Who gangsta enough to go that hard on it? Because the guys who wind up at the top, those aren't those guys. And look, I don't blame anybody if they ain't got it in them. Like you seen Des Bryant, it was like, I got a family to feed, which I think was a bit silly. But
Little Larry Johnson.
Yeah, I have no desire to hear anything that Des Bryant has to say on any of these matters. I'm not interested.
And this is the lottery we're also playing is when it's not up to us, but when we see someone with a platform and we figure out why they have that platform, you begin to realize that the reason they have the platform is not always correlated with the ability to use that platform well.
Yes.
And so when LeBron is light on specifics, I think there is an admittedly smart calculation that he's making that says, I have a tense relationship with the people that we seek to convert across the aisle, so to speak. I have the ability to access that. So if I am being most generous as a grader, what I'm now saying is he is realizing that connection is something that he's not ready to undermine.
Right.
And we just got to be aware of what he's doing, though.
Yeah, but it also then goes to say that LeBron is saying that the best I can do under these circumstances is nothing.
That's right.
Because other than the full-on crazies, nobody's message is, yo, we need to hate each other, right? So being on the all we need is love program is in effect saying nothing because you're kind of echoing what everyone is saying underneath, whether they mean it or not.
Right. And this is assuming that LeBron didn't just, by the way, forget because he's not that good at this thing of public speaking on heavy political issues. He didn't just forget that we had this whole conversation about naming things specifically.
Yes.
Let's name white supremacy. Let's name Nazism. Let's do all this stuff. And he went, all love matters, which is, again, we love it like pizza.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we shall see how it is that this winds up here going. Pablo Torre of ESPN, thank you for joining us. He'll be on a television show with me January 2nd, 2018.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to the Right Time